The United Nations gathering in New York to try to do something to improve the lot of the world's most disadvantaged people, which by one analysis includes half the human race. One initiative is to stop women and infants dying in childbirth. Another, which is being addressed by the American Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice, who we've been speaking to, aims to promote the empowerment of women. She herself, of course, is often called the world's most powerful woman. We must all learn to live with youthful nicknames. Hers apparently was the Steel Magnolia. A classically trained pianist, Condoleezza Rice has certainly shown the steely determination to survive amid an administration dominated by men hardly noted for wearing their hearts on their sleeves, or indeed anywhere else. The Iraq War was prosecuted by the men at the top, and a new biography of Vice President Dick Cheney claims that in 2004, when Rice was National Security Advisor, she was reduced to tears when Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld refused to turn up for her meetings. The author writes that he, Donald Rumsfeld, did not regard her as an equal and barely hid it. But in 2005, as Iraq deteriorated, Condoleezza Rice rose to become Secretary of State as America sought around for friends.
It is an honor to be asked to serve your administration and my country once again.
It's now being argued that she only found her voice, or at least had it listened to, in the face of military defeat. Today, Condoleezza Rice was in New York to promote women's influence in the world. Her own influence is considerable, but it's a considerable exception to the rule. Do you think the world will be a better place if it was run by women?
Well, I think the world can be a better place when women are fully a part of the economic life of their societies, the political life of their societies. We've just had a very inspiring discussion with a lot of women who are foreign leaders, including 4 presidents. And clearly it makes a difference when women are able to be fully empowered. No society is going to function well with half of its people on the sidelines.
It's often said that at a political level, women are much less likely to go to war, more likely to seek conciliation. And yet you personally have been responsible for prosecuting the war on terror, for policies like extraordinary rendition, and for locking people up for years without trial in places like Guantanamo Bay. How does that work?
Well, I don't think that women are particularly predisposed to particular kinds of policies, but women ought to be equally represented. And look, I've proudly helped our country to protect itself, and by the way, to help our country to protect others, because the war on terror is a global war on terror. And when these violent people try and kill innocents, you have to try and stop them. And by the way, if any of them, these extremists, were to actually come to power, we know what would happen to women.
Are you embarrassed or ashamed of any of those policies, though?
I am absolutely proud of what we have done to try and protect ourselves and to protect others. The United States suffered a terrible attack on September 11th, and various cities around the world, including London, by the way, have suffered terrible attacks since. And the difference in the war on terror is that it's not a law enforcement action. You cannot allow people to actually carry out their attacks and then punish them later, because if you do, thousands of people die. And I'm very, very proud that the United States has mobilized really an international coalition to try and stop these dangerous people from attacking innocents.
Of course, many of the finer points of these policies were dreamed up by men, weren't they? Did you find it hard to make any progress in that sea of testosterone inside the White House?
Well, I think that these policies were drawn up by an American government that was responding to a terrible attack. I was a part of that. Things have changed over time. We have better ways of defending ourselves, and so of course we've made changes to policies over time. But let's be very clear, and I will keep driving home the point. If innocents die because governments do not act, if innocents die because these violent people are not found before they launch attacks, then governments are not doing their job. And I can be certain of this. The American administration, the administration of President Bush, all of us have done everything that we can within our legal responsibilities, both international and domestic, to make sure that these sorts of attacks can't take place against innocent people.
Are you familiar with the accusation in the recent book Angler by Barton Gellman about Vice President Cheney, in which he says that Donald Rumsfeld more or less had contempt for you? Did you sense that?
Look, I know Donald Rumsfeld, and Don Rumsfeld and I have known each other for years and years and years. And of course, as a National Security Advisor working with Secretaries of Defense, State and others, it's a job that requires you to bring people together, and sometimes it's not easy. But Don Rumsfeld and I had a very good relationship going back years.
What about the accusation that Donald Rumsfeld repeatedly refused to turn up to meetings that you'd called, and that when, on the 25th of February 2004, he failed to show up for the third time, you burst into tears? Is that true?
Do I look like the sort that bursts into tears? No, that's not true.
When you look back on it, though, when history comes to judge this administration, it's going to judge it harshly, isn't it?
I think this administration is going to be judged well by history because, first of all, history's judgment and today's headlines are never the same. And this administration, if we are fortunate that the United States of America does not sustain another attack of the kind that we sustained on September 11th, I think we will be judged well, because I will tell you something. Every day there are evil men, and mostly men, out plotting and planning to try and hurt innocent Americans, innocent Brits, innocent Pakistanis, innocent Afghans, Iraqis, across the globe. And yes, it has been tough, and we have been tough. But you want steadfast leadership if you're going to protect innocent populations, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to do so thus far, though I would be the first to say that America and the rest of you are not safe. We're safer, but not safe.
And yet today we have the White House spokesman saying the world financial system faces possible calamity. That's as a consequence of the greedy and foolish behavior of a number of people on Wall Street. Doesn't that give you pause when you tell governments around the world to embrace market capitalism?
Well, you know, I don't know any good alternative to democratic capitalism. Let's remember what happened to the Soviet Union and its attempts to plan everything from above. Look, we do have a financial crisis, and the President spoke last night to the need to address it and to address it at its root causes. And there will be plenty of time later to examine why this happened. But right now, the President, my colleague Hank Paulson, the Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke, are working with congressional leaders as we speak to find a solution to this crisis so that this does not become a problem for ordinary Americans. That is the key. But let's remember that this is also an economic system that is responsible for most of the advances in the world, whether they are medical, whether they are through information technology, whether they are the advances that have allowed men and women to come from modest circumstances to better themselves. This is a system that's responsible for that. And when you ask yourself what is the alternative, I don't think there is one.
Secretary Rice, thank you for your time.
Thank you.